I have joining me now Arise analyst Rotimi Kade, who is live in New York. The top story, of course, is the Donald Trump-Zelensky meeting. They currently have met in Mar-a-Lago. But first, I'll ask you, there's still thousands of flights being cancelled. What's the snowstorm like as we speak today in New York City?
Well, this snowstorm actually has subsided. We've seen an array of, sunshine in and around the city, and we've been seeing a bit of, some of the heap of snow, like 4 inches, 6 inches of snow that we've witnessed in the past couple of days, beginning to melt away. People are beginning to come out, to run about their go about their businesses, but flights are still being canceled. The feasibilities is still pretty much, not conducive for air travel. But obviously, because in the next coming days, we're going to be experiencing more rainfall than snow. Most likely, we're going to be seeing everything returning to normal activities.
All right, then, fingers crossed. Let's move to this meeting that's currently ongoing between Zelensky and Trump. We know that we've been waiting for that, being that he announced it a couple of days ago, currently in Mar-a-Lago. So will Zelensky's willingness to consider a referendum on territorial concessions undermine Ukraine's negotiating position? And how might this impact the country's sovereignty? We're talking about conceding territories and lands here. So do you think that would affect Ukraine's sovereignty?
Well, definitely it will affect Ukraine's sovereignty, because when you look at, the region that Russia is actually proposing to be ceded to it, we're talking about Donbas region, we're talking about Luhansk. These are the easternmost industrial regions. So if you take that away from Ukraine, obviously it's going to affect Ukraine's economy, it's going to affect Ukraine's GDP. It's going to affect everything about Ukraine. Ukraine would need to go back and recalibrate economically. And with, the war that has currently ravaged the country for the past years, how in the world do you think Ukraine is going to recover from that? The damages that's been done. As a matter of fact, the European Union are actually proposing that Ukraine should not accept that. Instead, they are also proposing to use the frozen foreign assets from Russia to actually use to rebuild Ukraine. We're talking about within the range of $70 to $90 billion as a punishment for Russia waging war against Ukraine.
Right. Speaking about concessions, that reminds me of the issue of security guarantees. So how can the U.S. provide credible security guarantees to Ukraine without congressional approval? And what implications would this have for U.S.-Russia relations? Is it possible to get that, in place, being that security guarantees has been one of the, foremost at the talks here? And that's the reason why Ukraine has been talking about being a part of NATO.
Well, that's a very good question. I think there are two things on the agenda of Zelensky, as it were. He said it in a news conference, that number one is to get the security guarantees from the United States and the European Union in this meeting. His focus is that even if I'm going to compromise on some things, I still need to have security guarantees. The security guarantees prevent Russia from further attacks on its country. So he is very adamant on seeing how we can get that. There's absolutely no guarantee that he's going to get that with President Trump, because President Trump, as you're aware, actually had a call with Russian President Vladimir Putin earlier today before the meeting. The outcome of the meeting was not disclosed, but some analysts actually say that this could be a blueprint, for the meeting between him and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. How this is going to affect relations, obviously the relations has already been dented. The relations is going to take a while before it can actually get back to normalcy. But again, what we're going to be looking at today, the focus obviously is the fact that Ukraine wants to come out of this meeting victorious, but is not going to have, everything that it demands. He is pretty much aware of that, and he said he's ready to compromise, is willing to compromise, and if that compromise does not include the security guarantees, I believe that this meeting is just going to be another one of those meetings.
Now let's move to the European involvement in these talks. What role will European leaders play in the peace process, and how might their exclusion from the Trump-Zelensky meeting impact the negotiations? I mean, you cannot deny the fact that the EU has been quite absent on the table.
Well, I think on the contrary, the EU is actively involved. They just held a meeting on Friday with U.S. envoy Witkoff, and Witkoff characterized that meeting as being productive and constructive. EU is very particularly concerned about Ukraine, because Ukraine is more like a gateway between Russia and EU. And EU believes that if Ukraine is defeated, there's an open possibility that Russia could actually extend its borders beyond Ukraine, and that is going to hit Europe. EU also believe that Ukraine is very strategic because of the natural resources they actually get from Ukraine doing business with Ukraine. So there are so many things, and Ukraine, the European Union believes that they need to be actively involved. If not, definitely Russia is most likely not willing to stop beyond the borders of Ukraine. They're willing to extend it further. European Union, I should say, is also looking at, those holding Russia accountable in terms of its responsibility in this war. And they want to take advantage of the frozen assets of Russia in Europe, which is, in Belgium, to use that proceeds to rebuild Ukraine. But on the other hand, there's a lot of skepticism. Belgium, on the other hand, is believing that there could be some sort of repercussion if that money is actually released to Ukraine to rebuild its country.
Right. I'm looking at the key players here, which is between the EU and Trump, and then with Zelensky. But then let's move to NATO membership. Will Ukraine's potential renunciation of NATO membership be a deal breaker for the country, and how might this affect regional security?
Well, I think the initial proposal of Ukraine during the onslaught from Russia was to join NATO because they believe that NATO will definitely will protect the interest of Ukraine. But from the way the talks is going right now, President Trump is more like he disagrees with Ukraine's membership of NATO because of Russia's interests. One of the reasons why Russia is, waging war against Ukraine is because of its intention to actually join NATO. And NATO members don't mind Ukraine. I'm talking about the European members now don't mind Ukraine joining, but the United States has been the wedge in that progress. Most likely that's not going to happen. And that's the reason why Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is asking for security guarantees from the United States and the European Union. If I'm not going to get the membership from NATO, which means that one attack on one is one attack on all, I should be able to get Ukrainian U.S. security guarantees, which could stave off Russia's aggression against them.
Now, quickly, I'm just going to ask you a two-side question to this, and then we wrap up. How effective will the economic incentives, such as the proposed free economic zone, be in persuading Ukraine to make territorial concessions? Plus, how will domestic politics in the U.S. influence Trump's approach to the peace negotiations, and what implications might this have for U.S. foreign policy?
Well, first, I'm going to start with the second question,
Okay.
which is, how does this affect our U.S. foreign policy? Yeah, well, U.S. foreign policy do change from administration to administration. And I think President Trump's, foreign policy, it's pretty much known to everyone. He has posited that he wants peace. He is a champion of the vanguard of peace. Around the world. It believes that there's absolutely no gain except losses for countries to actually go against each other. But on the other hand, the United States is also taking its own wars and, with other smaller nations like Venezuela. But however, I think the foreign policy in terms of Ukraine and Russia is very, it's succinct. It's point and plain. It means that it wants an end to this war, but how is it going to end is absolutely not up to the United States president or its foreign policy, but it's up to everybody in this, the European Union, Ukraine and Russia. Everybody needs to be on the table and make some concessions and compromises. On the other hand, how Ukraine is going to be rebuilt, most likely they're trying to see implementing some economic, plans in different ways, free trade zones, getting loans from IMF, World Bank, getting donations from European countries and its allies, even in the Middle East and also Far East, like China, Japan, the Ukraine, and that's why you see Zelensky traveling around the world. Because he knows that it's an Herculean task to actually rebuild the country, especially the capital, which has been decimated by Russia.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Rotimi Kade. He's a RISE analyst, joined us from New York.